Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is 1 o'clock, April 7, and it's time to get our webinar started. This is a webinar about utilizing the cover crop simulator for economic success. My name is Peter Kivariga, and my co-presenter is Suzanne Fye. We are both with Iowa Soybean Association Research Center for Farming Innovation. And we'll probably wait for about 10-20 seconds before everyone has the ability to log in and get settled with us. So again, welcome, and let's wait for a couple, maybe 10-20 seconds.
Well, we can start out too by inviting people, if they have questions during the webinar, to please use the Q&A function, and we'll both be monitoring that during the webinar and looking for your questions and preparing answers for you.
Yes, we have people logging in, so maybe 5 more seconds. Again, hello, welcome to our webinar about utilizing the cover crop simulator for economic success. My name is Peter Kivariga, and my co-presenter is Suzanne Fye. We are both with Iowa Soybean Association Research Center for Farming Innovation. We really enjoyed the nice, almost summer-like weather, extremely warm and kind of like summer. And I know you are busy. Some of you are doing field work, and some of you have a lot of doing in the office. Of course, if you drive across Iowa, you've probably seen some fields with cover crop, and cover crops are considered one of the good tool to improve soil quality, soil health, and reduce nutrient loss. Of course, planting cover crop and managing require investment and the cost. And that's why last winter, we developed a so-called cover crop economic simulator. That's an online tool. And this is the part of the larger project, which is focused on building so-called soil health test interpretation portal for farmers and agronomists. This is the project which is funded partially by Iowa NSCS Conservation Innovation Grant, and also with some of the support from Iowa Soybean Association and Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance. So in this soil health test interpretation portal, we will be working with farmers who already have some soil health test data and helping them to summarize, analyze, and having this open platform. But today, we are focused on cover crop economic simulator. During the development of this simulator, we had an advisory team, which consisted several farmers, the NRCS staff, and also Iowa State University researcher. And they provided us some guidance and suggestions how to improve and enhance some of this feature, which we'll discuss a little bit later. There are two ways to find this tool, the cover crop economic simulator. The best way, you can go to Iowa Soybean Association website, iasoybeans.com, and then you find the research tab, and then go to results and tools, and the tool we will present today is the first one. Another way to link to the tool is to go directly through this link, and most of you probably could see this in your invitation for this webinar. And again, we would like you to log in and go to the tool as we discuss the future of the tool. The goal of this tool is have everything in one place because we wanted to save money and time for user to do research about cover crops and economics. And it's based on simulation and also partial budget analysis. Another objective of this tool was to give user a very quick and reliable snapshot whether the operation could be profitable using specific cover crop options and so on. And the last one, we wanted farmers and landowners to be aware about different various income and cost mitigation opportunities through different programs and for procedure to offset the cost and also to increase the chance of having profit and having economic impact. There are two, at least we are aware, there are two of tools like these out there. Both of these tools developed using the Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. One of them is developed by an SCS staff from Missouri, and the one we're showing here, it's a tool developed by Iowa State University Extension. And actually, a couple weeks ago, Dr. Alejandro Prestina was talking about cover crop economic research at Iowa State University, and he mentioned briefly one of these tools we're showing here. The unique feature of our tool is that it's also based on a partial budget analysis, but it has 5 unique features. One, it allows to widely use baseline values, and this baseline value can be customized to different options, situation, and scenarios. The second unique feature that we specifically focus on these cost mitigation and offset options for different programs, and also how to get specific or increased profitability chance using grazing and harvest and forage from cover crops. Unique feature number 3, it's interactive sensitivity analysis. And what I mean by sensitivity analysis, where a user can enter a range of different yield changes from cover crop, market prices, and different scenarios, and the tool will interactively show the results, especially net return for all these different options. The unique feature number 4 is extremely unique because it's the first in the country, the tool which has an early permanent ground cover research. And this research is conducted by Iowa State University, the agronomy department, and Department of Agriculture and Biosystem Engineering. Specifically, we are working with Cindy, Ken, and Raj, and they work with Iowa Farmer and corporate partners. And this tool has a component about the permanent ground cover crops. So we will show a couple examples from that too. And finally, what's unique here that we are having a component which talks about so-called societal benefits of cover crop and long-term management of soil health. And Suzanne will show examples later as she shows some of the feature of the tool. So now I would like Suzanne to show how to use the tool and features and several examples. And please submit your questions and answer in a question and answer box as you're listening along.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. I'm going to start out by just going through what are the different parts of the simulator. When you open the application, and when you open the website, it comes directly to the application. At the top of the application are tabs. This part here, the bulk of the screen is covered with the net return grid. It is dynamic. Any changes made to 4 of the pages in the application will instantly update the grid. It has 2 sliders. It has, on the left-hand side is where the pages will appear. There are 2 navigation menus, one at the top of the page and one at the bottom of the page. There's also a reset button on every page and a summarization, a page summarization, although page 1 has the entire summarization for all of the pages on it. I will talk in detail about each of these parts of the tool as we go through the presentation today. I do want to also mention that if you go to the top of your browser in the right-hand column or right-hand corner, you'll see either 3 dots or 3 bars. If you click on those, you can change the zoom percentage, and sometimes reducing it to 75 or 80% will show more of the application on your screen at one time. So that's just something that may be helpful to you when you're using the tool. So let's talk about the 5 tabs. The application, we have user guide, which is a very abbreviated version of the presentation I'm giving today. We have 2 erosion maps, an interactive one that works well if you have fast internet, and a static one if you don't. And then we have a resources tab that provides some information about features that are in the tool, as well as things that you might need to help you make a decision about cover crops. So let's talk about page navigation. Navigation menu at the top of the page has a drop down. It shows you the 5-page names, what is on each of those 5 pages. At the bottom of each page is a way to navigate just by the page number. And as I mentioned, there's a reset button, reset to defaults on each of the pages, and this will reset the page only that you're on. It will not reset all of the pages at once. So you may have made some adaptations on one page that you want to save. On another page, you want to go back and reset. You're able to do this by page. Now, 3 out of the 4 pages are involved in updating the dynamic interface. Each page is up, any changes you make on that page, every single value is customizable. Any change that you make will be reflected in the summarized costs or summarized values. But these all of these are summarized on the first page. So let's start with that. Let's take a look at page 1. This is the field and market information. I don't know why this is showing at the top here. Users can here set a field size. I'm going to just stick with a default of 1 acre, just so it doesn't complicate my presentation. You have a choice of crops following the cover crop, either corn or soybean. You can set the average yield. We have defaults in there, but you can customize this to reflect the average yield for your field in question. And you can set a grain market price. All of these things, when they're changed, will automatically change the grid and change your dynamic net return. Now, when you hover over different elements within the tool, you'll get these little pop-up boxes that'll give you more information. So here, for example, this says check box for cost savings if you consider reducing tillage. If you hover, it'll show you that if you no-till or strip-till, congratulations, you're already receiving these cost reductions. And in a partial budget world, we do not include things that are already part of your process. We are only saying what would be new to add to your system. So let's take a look at the cost to establish crops. This particular page, page 2, has 2 individual drop downs, one that allows you to choose annual cover crops, or as Peter mentioned, we have permanent ground cover is an option. And permanent ground cover is the only place where you will not be able to make changes to the formulas that create the values. This is because this is, as Peter mentioned, this is research that is being conducted. They have already documented first year costs, year 2 plus costs, and come up with a 5-year per acre average for this. And I think this could be a really an important game changer in increasing the number of acres of cover crops that are affordable for farmers to put down in Iowa. So as I mentioned, there's a second drop down. This one, if you select annual cover crops, will give you a list of 4 very common cover crop successful options in Iowa. And you can pick any of them. We would like to enhance this by adding one that's a winter kill option. We would also like to be able to include new cover crops that come on the market. Some are being developed that are also supposed to be cash crops. So we would like to include those as they occur. Each one of these values can be edited, customized by you. As you make changes, it'll change your per acre costs down the bottom of the page. Page 3, biomass and income value. Now, feeding cover crop to livestock and harvesting it for forage are two of the currently most common ways that people make ends meet using cover crops. They are income sources. And so we have definitely included them here. You can change the amount of biomass. We know that different years you have a different amount of biomass depending on rainfall, depending on when the seed got planted, depending on a variety of things. Plus, what crop is being, what cash crop is being put in after the cover crop, because you have a larger window for accumulation of biomass with soybean because it's planted a bit later than corn. So you can select both fall and spring, or either or, for as an income opportunity. Now, cost mitigations and offsets. There are numerous programs, state and federal, that provide cost share for first-time and ongoing cover crop users. And we have listed some of those basic ones that'll put you in the ballpark. In the mitigations as the top item there. We hope everyone take advantage of those things. But there are more programs. There are bundled opportunities that you can go and talk to your NRCS office about, find out what is available in your area. And there are some pretty attractive packages that are available through the NRCS and EQIP and through the state. Also, on this page is included ecosystem services. These are companies that are forming that will pay farmers to implement cover crops for carbon sequestration and for improved water quality outcomes. In fact, Iowa Soybean Association has started one such company, and they offer both of these opportunities for carbon sequestration and water quality outcomes. I have not used them here. They are substantial. Not all counties in Iowa are eligible. We do have information on that under resources, and you can check and see the map there to see if your county is eligible, and please contact them to find out more about the program. We have also on the mitigations page at the bottom, we have things that are related to soil health benefits. And these are things, regardless of any any yield change you may receive from cover crops, you will also have reduced erosion, because even a small stand of cover crops has roots, and those roots will help to retain your soil. Of course, a larger stand will do a better job than a small stand, but any stand is going to help with that. We also have some defaults for soil health, just improving the organic matter, and for water retention, because it will prevent, having a cover crop will help prevent evaporation. There's also an opportunity for early season trafficability. Of course, this only applies if it's a wet spring. So I am going to spend a little more time talking about erosion reduction, because as I mentioned, we have two maps. One of them ties back to the erosion reduction option, has a 5-category drop down in the mitigations. So why is this an important benefit? Well, it's cumulative. It's variable, as I mentioned. It's also variable by year, by location, by value of farmland. So we have two maps, a static map and a dynamic map. They are both based on average erosion values between 2007 and 2020, as calculated by the Iowa State University Daily Erosion Project. Very interesting website. And we've also incorporated a county layer that shows a 2020 county average land values. We've combined the two of these, and an estimate of about a 50%, roughly 50% reduction in erosion if you use cover crops. Now, even though at the currently land appraisers may not take erosion reduction and soil health into account when they're valuing farmland, these are things that you can see from the cab of your pickup. You can see ephemeral gullies in people's land. You can see bald hilltops and sediment depositions in grass waterways. So these are things bankers are aware of just by looking at what does it cost to generate the yields on a particular field. So even if they aren't technically part of an appraisal, I think farmers are very well aware of the impact of these things on land. So 2 maps, as I said, static map ties back to the categories that are preset in the dropdown for reduced erosion. The interactive map, if you deselect the watersheds layer, it shows a map that has roads and cities, makes it easy to find your particular location. You can recheck the watersheds and click on the location and come up with what is the, for that Huck 12 watershed, what is the average soil loss in tons per acre. And then based on the average land value for your county, 2020 land value, what is the estimated savings from loss reduction? So finally, page 5, added value for the greater good. These are things that are really hard to tie down to individual farm fields. So these are not connected to the dynamic net return on page 1, but our advisory team did say we need to bring people's attention to these things. The fact that they, by reducing flooding, they help reduce insurance costs. They reduce cleanup of waterways and streams. They increase pollinator habitat, things like that, things that benefit everyone in a local community as well as society as a whole. So we have about a dozen of them listed. The values that we've used are not authoritative. There are companies that are working to quantify these more closely, come up with meaningful numbers for these benefits. But for now, these are editable, but they are not connected to page 1. So now let's get to reading the dynamic net return grid. Once you've made all of your changes and edits to the subsequent pages, you go back to page 1 and you can see that your dynamic net return here for the selections that I've made in this presentation are a positive of $12.33 an acre. And that will appear in this center row, which is your net return if there is no change in your yield. Now, the y-axis shows blue rows are if there's a yield increase, bushels per acre. Red rows show if there's a yield decrease in bushels per acre. And this is all based on whatever you have set as the average yield for this field. Now, the $4 is going to appear in the center column of the grid, and this is going to be the change in value of your net return if you have a yield change. So it only impacts your net return if there's a yield change. The columns to the right will reflect an increase in the market price, and columns to the left will reflect a decrease in the market price. So now we get to the sliders. What are the sliders all about? Well, these will change the grid increments. So for example, if you have a net or an average yield of 200 bushels an acre, our grid increment decreases to a 1% yield change. So 1% of 200 is 2 bushels an acre, and that is why the increments here go up 2, 4, 6, 8. They go up in 2 bushel an acre increments and go down in 2 bushel an acre increments. You can reduce this or increase this to see what the changes are. Same thing with your market price. The slider here will change the cost increments. The default is 15 cents per bushel. It goes down to a nickel and up to $1, depending on the crop that you're looking at. You can change the increments of what these values are per bushel. So final thing I'd like to point out today is the resources tab. I want to mention in particular, there is information about the Iowa Soybean Association Soil and Water Outcomes Fund and perennial ground cover by Iowa State University in conjunction with Iowa farmers and several partners. So please take a look at those. And now we'll get to the Q&A. So I'm going to turn it back over to Peter.
Thank you, Suzanne. And we have a couple of questions. One of them is, how did we determine the $5 baseline for the improved soil health, organic matter, improved water retention, early season practicability, and so on? So maybe I'll try to reply first, and you can add your suggestion too. So I believe we put $5 as a baseline. It doesn't really connect it to any scientific references at this point, but when we talked to the advisory group and talked to other people, it was very relevant that it may be higher, may be lower, but some kind of baseline should be there so people can consider this as important input in the simulator.
Yeah, and we did include it as part of a default that these two values are defaulted into the dynamic net return. You can, if you don't agree with them, you can change them. You can make them 0. You can make them as high or as low as you think the value should be.
Another question is, would you be able to name a company that paying farmer for cover crop for carbon units? Yeah, actually there are many right now. There's kind of a boom. There are several companies who are trying to practice some of these practices, and they call ecosystem services, and they work with farmer and signing up for programs which eventually will pay farmers for carbon units.
Yeah.
You can send me personally an email, and we can reply. One of them is Iowa Soybean Association Soil and Water Outcome Fund, which Suzanne mentioned in her presentation.
Yeah, two other ones that we're aware of are Nori and Indigo Ag. So
there are many companies that often we get some emails and phone calls. One of the questions is a great tool. Would it be possible to produce the reports from the tool, like a PDF or printout? And that's a good suggestion. Actually, it's in the plan. We started developing this, but it's not finished yet. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, the tool will have ability to produce these reports online, and you can save as a PDF. Good comment. There's another question about how was specifically soil erosion, the cost of soil erosion determined? And I will try to answer first. So what we've done here, we use the data from Iowa State University soil erosion project, averages across a specific watershed. And then we assume that we would lose specific amount of soil. And then using the value of the land and the lost soil, proportionally, we estimated this economic value. And we also assume that cover crops are 50% efficient in reducing erosion. But again, maybe true or maybe not. It depends on the area and situation. Another question is about how does it herbicide system, how does it saving from herbicides or cost is in tool use? Suzanne, maybe you can help with this.
Yes, this is an interesting point. Some of the members of our panel who use cover crops have said that um, they normally do, if they are no-till, they normally will do an herbicide pass anyway. So there's no additional cost for doing that for cover crops. But they have said that over time, the amount of residue from the cover crop definitely reduces your need for herbicides. It won't let weeds grow. And they also have said that it increases or it decreases the amount of fertilizer that's required. So this is another enhancement that we're looking at making to the tool based on the 17 very good recommendations that we got from our advisory team. We will be adding a fertilizer category for both the cost to implement and the for a cost reduction on implementation over time, and for improving your boosting your biomass yield by adding about 30 pounds of MAP or DAP in spring to boost your cover crop. So we will be making these enhancements to the tool going forward.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'll address one more questions maybe. And again, if you have to leave, please leave, but we're going to stay here for a couple more minutes. One of the questions was about what's the utility tool in communication for the general public. And it reminded me some of the discussion with the advisory team and also with other users that one of the utility of this tool is to actually use this tool in discussion and communication with landowners, especially for some farmers who rent the land. Maybe Suzanne, you can add some of your comments and some reflection from our discussions about this.
Yeah, because the tool is interactive, it allows you to work with your landowner to kind of show what are the costs that would be associated with putting in cover crops and what are some of the mitigation opportunities that might be available. Again, depending on what part of the state you're in, the amount of erosion, that may be a significant factor in determining whether your landowner is interested in cover crops or not. So this is a very good communication vehicle for letting operators communicate to their landowners.
Yep, thank you. And we have another question. It's about how did we account for the carbon value, soil carbon value added to the soil? So, yep, we have these listed in actually two places as a potential soil enhancement or soil quality, soil health effect. We didn't really use yet specific reference, but we put a baseline. And the $5 baseline, it's an amount we decided to use first. And also a carbon value can be added through different ecosystem services credits and outcome, like we mentioned, from either one of the private or commercial program or the one we have here at Iowa Soybean Association. But again, that value will depend from either observed verification of carbon sequestration or from modeled value by using specific models like Comet Farm and other, which are used by NRCS and private companies. Good question.
Yeah, I think the values that we have in the tool for Iowa's application, Ag and Soil and Water Outcomes Fund, are based on actual payments that were made to farmers in the previous crop season.
Yeah, that's correct. That's from the last year, because
yes.
They may change depending on what practices farmers use.
Sure.
Some other questions. Again, thank you for staying with us. We still have 14 people staying with us over time a little bit. One of the questions from in the morning discussion, one of them was how to address differences in cover crop planting, for example, drill versus
aerial.
You seeded, and Suzanne, what's your answer?
Well, essentially, you can go into the tool and you can make those changes. So I have the tool live here. If we go to page 2, which is where the costs are, you can go and edit the formula. You can see per acre cost for seed.
And you have to share your screen. You have to share your screen.
Oh, I have to share my screen. Oh,
Sure,
that's
sure,
right.
sure.
I forgot. All right. Let me see. Share screen. Oh, you know what? I have to go down. I have to go here to share screen too. There we go. Share screen, share. All right, so can everybody see can you see it, Peter?
Yep.
See the application?
Yep.
Okay, so on page 2, cost to establish cover crop, if you go to the third line item, it says planting cover crop cost. I believe this was for drilling, but if it's more for aerial seeding, you can just change the value right there, and it will change your numbers per acre and for the field right at the bottom. As I mentioned, some farmers who terminate the cover crop, with a passive herbicide anyway, they would change this to 0, and immediately it changes the value down here in your summarized cost to establish. So that just shows you a little bit of the dynamics. I can show you a little dynamic of the interactive map. Again, depending on your internet speed, it will change how fast things load. You can take off the watersheds. You can find your field. You can put them back on and check out values. Each watershed has a different value based on the underlying county and based on the amount of erosion. So resources, when you click on the resources, here's the information about Soil and Water Outcomes Fund. These are the counties that are eligible in 2021. We go to perennial ground cover. There's quite a bit of information here, very good information provided by Iowa State. Please check it out. Very interesting stuff. So,
any other questions for those who are still online?
if not, we could probably wrap it up.
Yep. So again, thank you very much for attending our webinar and your questions and comments. And again, please go and check the tool, play with, and see how it works for you.
Thanks, everybody.